Hello, my name is Anthony Sato. I am the game designer for Pocket Odyssey, and I'd like to welcome you to the first part of the gameplay video. Before we get to that, I would like to explain some of the rules that you're going to be seeing as we play. So to start, I'd like to talk about the character creation process in Pocket Odyssey. It's one of the things that makes it very unique, as it takes literally 60 seconds to make a character. And it's randomized. There are certain choices that you get when creating a character, but for the most part you really don't know what you're going to get going in, and you kind of get that character made as you're pulling these cards randomly. So we'll be going over the individual aspects of your character. So one of the first things that you get to choose when you're creating a character is the abilities that your character has. You will randomly draw 3 abilities. There are 9 in the core set. And here's an example of some of these. So we have Fireball, Hardy, and Dodge. Now, let's say you draw these 3. You could decide to keep all 3 of these for your character, and he could use each one of these one time during a fight. However, you have the choice at any time to put 3 points into Fireball and use this 3 times per fight, and then totally discard these cards. You don't have to use these at all. Or, if you'd prefer, you could perhaps use Fireball twice and use Dodge once. Really, you get to decide what your character wants, if you want to specialize or to use all 3. It can be hard to say no to any power, though, so I see a lot of people choosing to use each ability one time because the diversity really helps your character. So the second part to the character creation process, and possibly the largest, even bigger than selecting your powers, is the selection of the character background. This is generally randomized as well. You will get 2 of these and get to choose one of these that you'd like. In order to explain these, what the differences are in these cards a little bit more, I'll need to explain how challenges work in Pocket Odyssey. A challenge is basically when the heroes go up against something difficult and they need to make a roll or something to see if they're successful at completing the task at hand. And essentially the way challenges work is there are 3 different types of challenges. Now the storyteller gets to determine the difficulty of the task. So you have normal challenges. That would be anything like climbing a ladder or just stuff that a normal person can do. And then you have hard challenges, which we're talking maybe something you'd see in a Hollywood video at this point, perhaps climbing a rock wall. And then you have impossible challenges, which is the hardest. And those are things you see in ridiculous Hollywood movies, like someone climbing a wall while it's in a tornado, well, inside of a tornado, and maybe they've been shot a couple times and they're missing a leg. So that would be considered an impossible task. Now the way that these work with the skills is that each character gets 2 to 3 skills, and these skills will help you with those challenges. So let's say the easiest example I can use here is Physique for the Ogre Slayer, which will help him with physical challenges because he is basically a superhero, is what it says here, super athlete. So let's say he tries to climb a castle wall, just straight up. So that the storyteller would probably determine that that would be considered a hard challenge. So what that means is, if it's a hard challenge and you have the ability that you can use to help you with that, then that's up to the player to say, hey, I have this ability here, Physique. My character obviously would be able to do this easily because he has a special ability. If you can dictate your skill that you can apply to that challenge, then it will alter the number that you have to roll. So with this example, the storyteller would say, okay, climbing that castle wall is considered a hard challenge, but since you have Physique, that actually is automatically a success for you. Now, if you have Elfin Blood, her character does not have the skill Physique, so if she's trying to do the same thing and the storyteller says that's a hard challenge, then that means she has to roll a d6, and if you get a 4 or above, it's a 50-50 chance, essentially. If you get a 4 or above, then you're successful, so she would be successful doing that. However, if she rolled and got a 3 or below, then she would fail that task. Now, let's say you're missing a leg, you've been shot a couple times, it's in a tornado, and you're trying to climb that castle wall, and the storyteller's like, no, that's impossible. Okay. Now, the Elfin Blood, she doesn't have the ability, Physique, that could help her with that. Since it's impossible, she literally cannot take a roll. I mean, she could attempt to do it, but that's like a crit fail So, you know, generally people won't try to do those kind of things. However, the Ogre Slayer, he does have the ability physique, so he can actually attempt to take on that task. And then the way that it works is it's a 50-50 roll. Whenever you roll, it's going to be 50-50. So again, he's going to roll. He gets a 3, which unfortunately for him means he just fails the task, but he does fail the task. So the storyteller gets to determine exactly what happens there. But that's the skills. Each character has 2 to 3 of those. Most have 3. Actually, the Dragon Mage here only has 2 because one of his is a little bit more powerful here. As you can see here too, the cards are smaller because it's a micro game. But in order to keep the awesome character art, we basically have it so that you can flip it and see the nice colored illustrations on the back there. And you know, if you get to memorize your character, then you might as well just flip your character over on the prettier side. So that's the character backgrounds. Okay, and then we have a couple of aspects over here that will help kind of round out who your character is in the Dungeon Fell, the world of Pocket Odyssey. So first we have the Flaw card. Each character randomly draws one of these cards. These cards right here. As you can see, some of these examples are gullible. So this means your character is a gullible character. You can also have cold-blooded, which is you got to do what you got to do. Maybe that's not a horrible character to have, especially in this world. And then you have the last flaw, which again is not really a flaw, but it's Epic Beard, so I can't really say no to that one. And then over here we have something called personal goals. Now the way personal goals work is that you randomly get one of these. You conceal what your personal goal is. You don't want anyone to know that until the end, until you actually complete that personal goal. In order to beat Pocket Odyssey, you have to complete the quest. The party quest is given to you. The example in the gameplay video would be to escape the Gob Stronghold alive. But then each character also needs to play their quest, personal quest card as well in order to win. So we have a couple of examples here. Show Mercy. This is a mean one. Betray a party member. And then do something rash, which I believe is what Moises has in the video. But that really determines some actions that your players are going to take to keep things interesting. And then over here, we have potion cards that you get, and you're going to see these in the gameplay video as well. So this one's a Rage. And basically you take damage to become really, really strong. And then lastly, we have items. And most of these items are magical, they're very interesting. The rule booklet here, you can reference this. It'll kind of describes what each one of these items really is. But you could get Warhorse. Again, these are all random, right? You could get Love Potion, Box of Keeping, Magic Mirror. There's a lot of them in there. Orchid is in there. There's a lot of random ones in there as well. But it's kind of interesting to see what people decide to do with those. So the last part to character creation are your character stats. Let me flip this over here. These are the different players. You have 3 stats, and these stats affect what your character is good at. So you have attack, defense, and special. They're kept very, very simple in Pocket Odyssey. But essentially the way it works is if I had 1 point in my attack, and I decided to melee a monster, I'd roll the die. Excellent. I would get 2, and I'd add 1 because I have 1 attack. So that would be a total of 3. Now, when you're creating your character, you get 3 points to distribute, so you can just kind of flip these points over wherever you'd like. So defense is good. It helps you with basically your hit points. We call them defense points in Pocket Odyssey because they work a little bit different. I'll explain that in a second when I talk about the monsters. But defense will help you to become tougher, and special applies to your ability cards, your special powers that you get for your character. So if you have Fireball, you can make that Fireball even more effective. One of the cool things in Pocket Odyssey is that it's built to be enjoyable after playing for only an hour and a half. So every time you have a fight, you add a stat point anywhere you would like. So every time you fight any kind of encounter, you immediately feel like your character improves afterwards. So it's a little bit of an intro to the statistics. So while we're talking about stats, I'd like to explain a little bit about how stats factor into a combat, since combat is such a large part of Pocket Odyssey. So in this case, here's the character card. We're going to leave powers out of it, keep it really, really simple. But your character is the yellow character. Here he is on the map. He has an attack of 2, and no defense and no special. Actually, he should have another point in here somewhere, but that's okay. We're just going to use this example of 2. Each character starts off with 3 defense points plus however many defense points they have in their defense stat. So he has none, so he has max of 3. So now the way that defense points work is they work differently than hit points normally work in these kind of games. But let's say here we have the player and he attacks the monster here, which is represented by this cylinder. And this cylinder correlates with this card here, which is telling me that this cylinder right here is a Gob Berserker because he's attached to this card. And in fact, here it says he's got 2 hit points, 2 defense points to start. So let me put 2 on there like that. So now the way melee works and defense points, because it's at the core of the game, is let's say my character, hero character, attacks this Gob Berserker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll, so you got attack of 2. So wonderful, I roll a 1 and I add 2, so that makes an attack of 3. Okay, now the Gob Berserker has a base defense of 3, plus he has 2 hit points that he starts off with, so he actually has 5 right now. So now my character, in order to wound him, has to get above his defensive number, and this is the same as well, the opposite direction. So right now he did not get that. So what ends up happening is a Gob is not wounded yet, but he does lose a defense point. This is to represent essentially that the Gob has dodged the attack, he's evaded in some way, but he's tired out. So eventually, if you keep swinging at someone and you wear them out, they're going to get tired enough where you can really get a good hit in. So that's essentially what this is emulating. So now, we'll say the Gob attacks back. The storyteller does not have to roll a dice at all to kind of keep combat flowing as fast as possible. So his attack is 4. Now the player does have to roll. The player rolls the d6, so I got a 6, that's great. And then I add my 3 for my 3 defense points, so that I have a total defense of 9 against the Gob's attack of 4. So he has to get above 9 in order to wound him. Now again, this works the same way. He's not wounded, but he is tired from dodging the attack, so he loses a defense point. So now he's down. So essentially, the way this works is that even if I lose all of my defense points, I could still be okay. I could never get wounded. I could continue dodging. On the other hand, even with the 2, if I end up rolling a 1, when he attacks me the second time, he actually wounds me on the second time he attacks. So it adds a very tense factor in terms of you never really know what's going to happen. You can do your best to offset that, but you never know what's going to happen in this game to keep it kind of fast-paced and interesting. Now on the other end here, the Gob at most he can lose, it would be all his hit points, but he still has a base defense of 3. Now some of the monsters, like say the Belcher Dragon here, he has 6 plus 6. I mean, he's a pretty bad dude, but the lowest he has is 6, which means that he's very, very difficult to take down, even when his defense points are all gone. Another thing about combat that I'd like to explain is the turn order. In order to keep combat feeling quick, responsive, realistic, what I've designed is for the monsters to act on the player's turn immediately afterwards. What happens a lot in traditional RPGs is you get groups that act together. So like sometimes the heroes will all act, and then finally the monsters will all act, and the heroes will, and it feels like this kind of disjointed, more like a strategy game. But I wanted this to really feel like the heat of combat. So what happens here is that after the yellow player goes, all the yellow monsters activate. They get to go right after that. So here we go. Over here, for the storyteller, this is what he has. He's got a Gob, so now he knows, okay, so this player just went, so now the yellow circle, which is a Gob Berserker, gets to activate in his turn. Now each of these pieces here is where you can put your hit points for each of your monsters. And also we have chips here for special abilities. So let's say the Gob Berserker here, if he gets hit and he doesn't get wounded, he doesn't get killed, then he gets an ability which says that he gets a +1 to his attack for every one of those others. So he gets to be a pretty mean character, pretty dangerous. But either way, I can reference this as the storyteller to see whose turn activates on what and what the character represents. Sorry man, this is sticking to my fingers. So then after the yellow person goes, then it would go to the left, and let's say that would be the red character. After he activates, then the red monster activate, which I see here is a Gob. And then I do not have a blue player, but I would since I have blue monster, so I'll put the blue player right there. Then the blue player would go, and so it just kind of alternates in that fashion. Okay, and here's the last part that I'd like to go over, which again is a very large part of the gameplay in Pocket Odyssey, but it's how the storyteller creates his quests. So this being a tabletop game with the spirit of a traditional RPG, one of the main things that cannot happen is the requirement for prep time before you play. In order to fix that, I've created this system here of quest cards. The players will work together to choose an overall quest for themselves, and they keep it very broad. There's examples that I have here in Pocket Odyssey. Then, so for example, it could be escaping a gob prison, like you'll see in the gameplay video. On top of that, there will be opportunities for the storyteller to look at ideas for different villain types, things of that nature, just kind of give them ideas for what the quest could be. Here's the big part though. You're going to draw 4 of these cards. Now I know this is really difficult to see, but each one of these cards has hints on it of what an element of the story could be. So in this example, we have a chase scene. This gives you examples of different types of chase scenes that you could use in your story. Now, you choose 4, and you decide which 3 you like the most, and you discard 1, and you play those 3. Obviously, you could choose as many as you wanted. You could keep 4 if you want to do that as well, but this is the recommended for the time limit. So for example, here we have Infiltrate, Maze, Stealth Mission, and Chase Scene. Again, they'll give you all a different example. So Maze doesn't just have to be what you think of like the Labyrinth or something like that. A maze could be, I think I described here, like maybe they're going through some magical forest, they get lost, they get turned around. It could be even you're in a city and you're looking for somebody, scouting for someone. So there's a lot of different ways that these can be used to build quests. And you'll see, I go over kind of the cards that I got as I was a storyteller. So hopefully that's enough of an explanation of the rules to kind of give you an idea of what's happening in the game as we're playing. Before we do that, I just really quickly want to give you an idea of the experience levels of the players and how much of traditional tabletop RPGs they've played in the past. Mike and I have been playing together since we were like 13 or younger than that actually, but for a very long time, so he's got a lot of experience with that. Kevin is somewhat new. I think he's played less than 5 times. And Ashley, this is actually her first time ever playing a tabletop RPG. In addition to that, I did play the storyteller, you'll notice in the video, but I did not prepare. I had no idea going in what quest cards I was going to get, so that was really all. I had to come with that on the fly, and we did cut maybe a minute or 2 here or there where I was just kind of figuring out what was going to happen during that quest, but I think it's probably for the better not to see those. But anyways, I hope you enjoy the video.